Sometimes what we currently are facing and what lies directly ahead of us can almost freeze us into inaction. But that would be the worst possible response we could make. I suspect that most of us in this room are the products of public education. Certainly, now as school board members, each of us, along with more than 3,500 other school board members across this state, play a critical role and carry a heavy responsibility for the outcomes and the results, good and bad, achieved by every Missouri child. It does not matter if your district is small, medium, or large, rural, suburban, or urban. We jointly bear the responsibilities for and share the opportunities to protect, to improve, and to boldly and loudly fight for not only your own local districts, but also for Missouri public education as a whole. Everyone has their own story, and it is how we interpret that story, how we put our own spin on it, that separates us from everyone else. Those of you who know me well know that I take great pride in where I come from. I grew up in rural Missouri, and you can still see my rural country roots from the cowboy boots I wear everywhere I go. And if I'm not careful, you'll hear it in my South Missouri accent, and most certainly in the number of y'alls that I use when I am conversing with friends. I grew up through organizations like FFA, FTA, VICA, FBLA, and others. Because of FFA and other aspects of public education in my life, this incredibly shy and introverted young man learned how to overcome fear in order to speak in front of large groups like you today. I am a changed person because of public education, and it made me what I am today, professionally, personally, and emotionally. I got that from my small rural school, and I am very proud of that. However, I must also share something else with you. I went to Mizzou very ill-prepared to succeed in college, especially in the areas of science and math. And it was because of problems in those curriculum areas in my local school. At the same time, I took CLEP tests and received college credits for 6 hours of English, 6 hours of history, and 3 hours of geography because I had amazing English, history, and social science teachers in high school. My point is, there were problems in my rural school 30 years ago, and there are challenges in every school yet today, be it public, private, charter, small, rural, large, urban, suburban, otherwise. And to quote someone much wiser than me, those who fail to understand the lessons of history will be doomed to repeat them. I certainly hope that headlines tomorrow online and in newspapers across the state don't read something like this: Missouri School Board President admits that Missouri schools have been failing for 30 years since he was in high school. But dealing with inaccurate and distorted headlines is something we have all learned to face in public education. Do you get tired of those negative headlines? I know I sure do. Today in public education, we hear from so many critics with their own agendas. They tell us how awful our public schools are, how we can't compete in the global economy, how we can't keep up the pace, how the next generation will be worse off than ours. And our critics are more than happy to lay all the blame where? On public education. Everyone in this room today knows that that is nothing more than a pile of those cow chips I mentioned earlier in this speech. Those headlines get people's attention. But if you only read the headlines in life, you will soon see a picture that is always distorted. Because the role of a headline is first and foremost to be eye-catching, and to a much lesser extent, to be truthful or honest. As we look at the headlines and we see the words of others who criticize us, we need to start making our own headlines. We need to start fighting back, to begin believing so strongly in what we do and why we do it that it doesn't matter who is against us, because our strength of conviction must be so strong that we will overcome whatever the odds might be. Every speech needs a closing. You're sitting there thinking it's about time for this one. And it's getting close. As I was thinking about headlines and how I would close down today, a song that meant a great deal to me a few years back came to mind. A young country group called South 65, more than a decade ago, recorded a hit song entitled "A Random Act of Senseless Kindness." It talked about headlines from a local newspaper and how those everyday headlines paint a bleak picture of life without hope, and that are quick to point out only the bad side of every situation. But yet, as the song explains, there is still hope. So in closing, as they play "A Random Act of Senseless Kindness," I recognize that the point of this amazing song goes much deeper than my discussion today with you with respect to our society. But it does relate very well to what we as school board members and administrators want to do, need to do, and must do to make a difference in Missouri public education. So now, if you'll indulge me, please sit back, as I am going to, and take the time to listen to the words closely in this song. there is nothing random in our actions to lead local school districts, to advocate for children, to champion student achievement, and to support public education. Instead, I believe with my heart and my soul that these are the most deliberate acts of kindness that you and I can ever demonstrate in this life. It is our destiny to ensure that every Missouri child gets the high-quality public education they deserve. Just as each of us has our own story, I ask you to join with me today in committing to help each of our students back home write their own personal stories. A story of a dream fulfilled and of a life well lived and built on the solid foundation of an exceptional public education. On behalf of 900,000 Missouri students, thank you for your commitment to public education.